everybody. So I'm going to attempt in the next 15 minutes to get through 5 years of PhD work without bombarding you with too much science along the way. I worked with Jane in Nottingham before she sadly left us and retired. We worked to set up an early supported discharge and an early intensive rehab service in Nottingham. And that experience of setting up that service then fueled me with a bit more interest and desire to kind of think a bit more about what we needed to do for the service in Nottingham, particularly focusing on the longer term needs of children with acquired brain injury, including those resulting from malignant and non-malignant brain tumours. So rehab, the focus for rehab for us as therapists is always around participation and well-being. So the end goal is about participating in activities at home, at school and the community, and ensuring that the children and families experience well-being and quality of life. And so that's really where the PhD came from, thinking about those longer-term post-discharge needs. So this is a PhD in an overview. So the official title was Developing an Intervention to Identify and Address the Long-Term Participation and Wellbeing Needs of Children and Young People with Acquired Brain Injuries and Their Families. And so it was split into two phases. So one was very much we needed to explore what those outcomes and needs were first through a scoping review of the literature. I then went on to do a cross-sectional survey of children and the family and their wellbeing and participation outcomes and goals. Then did some interviews with children and parents and focus groups with health, education, social care and charity stakeholders. And then brought all that information together to try and help to then develop an intervention. And we did that through a co-design workshop with all the stakeholders participating into that and some modelling of the intervention. All the papers, the whole results are all published up there if you want to find out more. So the scoping review to start with, so that was really to just see what the literature said already. The main findings from that were poor outcomes and extensive needs, as we all know, unmet needs and unrecognised needs up to 12 years post-injury, and a lack of evidence around the needs of specifically of UK children and families within that UK healthcare service context. And there was a lot need for longer-term specialist follow-up and integrated care pathways. And that scoping review included children with brain tumours as well. So that then led us to a survey. So we used the database of children that we had within our service. So recruited from all the children that had been admitted to the Nottingham Children's Hospital between April 2017 and November 2020. And then focused in on 5 to 18-year-olds that were all at least 1 year post-injury or diagnosis. And they were all within 4 years then. So they were within that, from a brain tumour world, within the not yet hit 5 years and into long-term effects phase. So there were 170 eligible families. And we had 51 families that completed the survey, which made 95 responses, so 49 from parent and carers, 41 from children themselves, and 5 parent proxy reports where the parent reported on behalf of the child. And it was really important that we wanted to get that the child's voice in this, about what it was like for the children themselves and the young people. So of that 51 families, 45% of them had their injury from a brain tumour, and 24% from trauma and 31% from stroke, infection and inflammation. And that was like slightly different to what our cohort normally looks like. We'd normally have more traumatic brain injuries, but I think just recognising that we were a children's brain tumour research centre, and obviously this population are well used to being in research and therefore were very keen to participate and potentially had high level of needs that they wanted to talk about too. So we asked them to complete some standardised measures, and this is the score. So the PEDS-QL measures the children's health-related quality of life. So that's how well they feel they can, what their quality of life feels like to them. So 67% of the children said that they had reduced health-related quality of life. The CASP measures participation in activities at home, school and in the community. 72% of children said that it was severely restricted. This is all against like healthy population norms as to how we work this one out. The PEDS-QL FIM measures family impact and parental health-related quality of life, and 53% of parents told us that that was reduced. And the PHQ-4 measures parental anxiety and depression, and 37% of parents screened positive for either anxiety or depression. So things were not great. We also asked what was important to children and families in terms of their goals. So what were their top 3 goals? 93% of the children said it was activity and participation related, and 83% of parents said the same. So that's within that activity and participation domain is around recreation and leisure, sport and outdoor activities, socialising, going to the cinema, going on holiday. Other things were around driving cars, riding bikes, having relationships, and being generally active and sociable. So then the next step was to then interview a sample of the participants. So we took a stratified sample, so that was 10 families, so 10 children and 10 parents. And we interviewed them together to just start to delve a bit deeper into those responses, and made sure that we got representation, as you can see on there, from across the different diagnoses, age groups, the severity of their injury, and like their indices of multiple deprivation as well. So we interviewed them and asked them a bit more about what the barriers and facilitators were to participation and well-being, and what they felt were the things that were impacting them. Then I did some focus groups with stakeholders, so from nurses, allied health professionals, neuropsychologists, we had teachers and support staff and social care and charity partners, and also asked them again what those barriers and facilitators were from their perspective that families were experiencing, what were the challenges for them as professionals, and also what usual care looked like, so we could get a really good picture of what was going on in the East Midlands. I then had a lot of data. And had to try and work out how to analyse it, and used something called the behaviour change wheel, which is a model that allows you to look at the drivers for behaviour, and then the green circle in the middle, at the basic in the middle of that is capability, opportunity and motivation. So use those 3 categories and the subcategories below to help try and map the findings. So barriers, so the capability was a lack of awareness and understanding, system navigation and knowledge, needs recognition, so people understanding what needs somebody had, the need for ongoing rehabilitation support, as Daniel's already spoken about, and the impact of fatigue. So just briefly, a few quotes from here. So people talked about it being a hidden disability, and there's nowhere to turn because nobody really understands what the needs are. The fact that the dots are not all joined up for a brain injury, and the brain injury is everything in your life, and not really, social life, medical, and everything not being connected. And a complete lack of understanding out there from other professionals about what families are having to deal with and what parents are managing on a day-to-day basis. From an opportunity point of view, it was around the parental care and advocacy role, and that was a lot that parents had to take on, the social isolation that it can cause, that having had a brain injury can cause, and the lack of peer relationships and clear pathways and systems, and the lack of resources. So people not having the opportunity to be able to participate because they've not got these things in place. One of the physios said it was the sports and hobbies that you do actually then help your mental well-being and social interaction, and therefore if there's a lack of those because you can't access them because of physical needs, that then impacts on everything else. Parents talked about it being isolating and lonely when people don't understand, and about a sense of feeling very, very overwhelmed by it all, and not really sure which way to go. From a motivation point of view, it was about the problems of accepting or adapting to a new normal, and that can take time. From a child's point of view, a lack of confidence or insight into their difficulties. From professionals' point of view, they talked about professional roles and boundaries, whose job is this to do, a lack of support to achieve goals, and the emotional impact of the whole family. So about the young people not wanting to be defined by this, they want to keep it quiet, they don't want to be seen as anything other than normal, particularly in school, and that causing a problem within transitions in education. Health professionals sometimes dismissing that sort of extra sort of goal setting stuff, and we see it as a cherry on top of the cake, and not because we're just focusing on keeping people alive and getting them home. And this quote is the one that stuck with me throughout the whole thing, really. It's like we've got our life with the boys, and then we've got our separate existence with Megan. So that was a mum talking about how it completely fractured family life for them and the emotional impact of that. facilitators. So the things that they talked about that would help would be increased knowledge and awareness, support and upskilling parents to, for system navigation and to be able to advocate, having long-term access to specialist ABI rehab services, peer support for the whole family, and integrated collaborative cross-sector family-centred care pathways. And there's some quotes here, but I'm running out of time. Jane's giving me a look. So yeah, just those really all of those. So then we took that into a co-design workshop, and then so I threw all this information back to the families and to the stakeholders and said, right, we've got all of this, what do we do about it? And so 17 participants came for a morning, and we tried to pull all that together, presented the key findings and handed it over to them and say, what are the solutions? We had a children's group, so they looked at their interventions for them, specifically with parent support needs group, and then around the pathway. And again, mapped all that back to the behaviour change wheel. And what basically came out of it is this. So the need for bespoke care, like that actually it's not every child and family need the same things, and the fact that it needs to be flexible, it needs to be when they need it, and that could be from my perspective of a paediatric physio from 0 to 18, and it could be 1 year after injury, or it could be 10 years after injury, and the fact that they need to be able to re-access that support at any time, and have a needs assessment, so regular needs assessments to really just check in, see where they're at, help to recognise the needs that perhaps they're not recognising because you're just living it. And sometimes it's the right questions being asked that actually go, oh, actually that is a problem, and maybe we could do something about that. The need for a single point of contact, so very much central to this is about a case coordinator, something that Helen and I have talked about a lot, and somebody to come back to who can say, you can go with a question and say, what do I do about this? And then a series of sort of interventions and picking the bits that you need. So goal setting and action planning, practical and emotional support for parents, signposting, referrals, education and training, the need for those cross-sector communication, collaboration, coordination, the 4 Cs, that really linking services together and working together, and for coaching around helping families to really work through some of this themselves and problem solving. Underpinned by, at the top of it, that access to specialist MDT rehab packages, that is still really needed, and then you need to be able to access that, and you couldn't have a case coordinator without access to that. So, in summary, basically, participation matters and family matters, and those things need to be considered all the time, from right through lifelong. There are a lack of available and accessible inclusive activities, and I would not solve that in a PhD, but we need to recognise that. We need to try and signpost as best we can as professionals, and the need for long-term, lifelong support. So the intervention is around a case coordination model. It's not rocket science. It exists in other realms, but we need to use it within the ABI world more, and we need funding for those posts to help bring things together, and we need the long-term access to specialist MDT rehab, not just in that early phase. And so the next steps really are, when I've now had a bit of a break, thinking about how to continue developing the intervention and getting it implemented. Thank you. Just over.